to episode 0, a test run of a new show through the Geekiverse. It's your buddy Jeff Beta, giving it a try here with the Super Story Bros. So this idea I had looking at the anniversary that we just went through with the Geekiverse, and wanted to get back in. Want to spend some time with my my friends at the Geekiverse, and also just kind of try something on my own. Bought a new microphone. See if this webcam works for something besides Zoom calls for work, and gonna give it a shot. So we're gonna take some time and go through some different shows and look at story structure. And by different things, I mean we're gonna try video games. We're gonna try really kind of fun TV shows that have some really like actiony, the classics, the stuff that that have that really good story to it, but are still a lot of fun. And we're going to start with the Clone Wars. So we're going to start the many iterations of the Clone Wars that have been done. Usually Josiah is the man to talk all Star Wars, but I got some ringers on my side. One of my buddies are here. His name is Brian Vandenberg. Brian, like I said, is he's got the Journal of the Wills right here. You just pull it right up. It's right there for you. But I'm so glad he's here today. Hey, Brian, how's it going?
Hey, Jeff. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to talk Star Wars.
That's right. We're gonna talk mostly the Clone Wars, and then we're gonna talk about a very specific Clone Wars, which, if you put in any search engine, it's gonna pop up that CG animated one, Filoni's masterpiece. There, we're gonna talk about one before that. So, kind of the plan for today is we're gonna talk about the 2003 animated Star Wars, 2D animated Star Wars, the Clone Wars. And you're going to talk through Volume 1, Volume 2, and talk about, and to start where it came from, what's the whole, why does this exist, what is this, and then we're going to kind of wrap up with how does this tie into the 3D Clone Wars, because that's where we're going. We're going to go and we're going to go episode by episode and just kind of talk through all of it and do the movie and everything. So I guess to start, Brian, what is it? What is the 2003 Clone Wars? What does it look like?
So the 2003 Clone Wars is something near and dear to my heart. Episodes. So the first run was 5-minute episodes and kind of like little vignettes, story vignettes about a number of different characters in the Clone Wars, following right after the events of Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, it's what I think is so interesting is that we get this in the middle of the prequels, right? This is what intercedes between 2 and 3, and this is before we see 3 in the theaters. We have these the storyline, this connective tissue. It reminds me a lot of what we saw from Shadows of the Empire. Great game, great comic book series, and toys. But I think I'm trying to think of, there's at least one more medium, maybe, or not, at least those two. The video game, right? Of course, yeah. Great N64 PC game, and something we can take a look at some point because it's cool. But it's another great part about this specific series is it's kind of, not you said LucasArts' first foray into 2D, but also way of like kind of pulling in things from the extended universe. Now, kind of have the talk of the tiers of canon now of Star Wars, because no good Star Wars podcast doesn't at least have to address that multi-layered nightmare that Disney created. But at this point in time, there's only canon and then the extended universe, the EU. And what's so cool about this is it seems like it's George kind of saying, all right, some of these ideas, they weren't that bad. Let's give them some play in canon. Now, of course, with the mouse, right, we don't have that anymore. We have Legends and we have the Disney canon.
Right. Yeah, this originally was billed as canon, so it comes out Attack of the Clones is 2002. The first episodes of this come in 2003, and then again in 2004, and then the final run of them comes in March 2005, which is just a few months before Revenge of the Sith premieres in May of 2005. So it really filled in the gap nicely. Not a ton of additional content during that time. I mean, there was books that corresponded with the movies and things like that, but it wasn't as it is now, where you get the corresponding show and books and comics and games and all that. So this was filled a really interesting need, I think, for Star Wars content, and it just, you know, what I love about it is it just expanded that story and just was that connective tissue between episodes 2 and 3 and filled in a lot of those gaps. And it talked about an era and a part of Star Wars that is clearly near and dear to Lucas's heart, being the Clone Wars. Because during this time, you know, we get the Clone Wars video game, we get this show. This is essentially basically a test run pilot for the 3D animated show, which kicks off with a 3D animated movie.
Right.
So George definitely loves the Clone Wars and realized the vast stories that can be told in that era with all the different Jedi, the clone soldiers, with the separatists as well. So he was really into that. And I always appreciated the level of detail and storytelling that went into these 5-minute episodes.
Well, you wonder how far he got into the first treatment of the Journal of the... I mean, forget the first title of Star Wars, but it's there's a pretty... And you're going to give it to me in a second. But it comes from one line. And I would imagine pretty early on in a script treatment of "I fought with your father in the Clone Wars," Obi-Wan says. And, you know, I think that's Lucas, that's all living up here. And he's been forever just like, I need to get this out. I need to tell the story of what the Clone Wars was. Because I think for the longest time that painted so many different pictures, and it's just one line. I mean, you get one line and it extrapolates into all of the media we see now. That runs to current time. I mean, he wrote that 1970, probably. The treatment's probably 70, 71. I mean, it's early. And now it's living into 2020. We've got the end of the 3D series.
Yeah. The end of season 7 of the current Clone Wars.
Right. So let's start talking about, you know, what actually... So you're telling us, you know, it's 3 to 5 minute starts with these little treatments. And I can remember clear as day on Cartoon Network is where they showed up. Because we got to talk about the creator now. We got to talk about, not the creator, but the designer. And the artist behind this is the same person who animated our childhood. Basically, he started with Dexter's Laboratory and Samurai Jack, which I didn't make that connection until I was reading his bio and more about him. I'm like, oh, of course they are the same. They look very angular and everything like that. And we get into now we take that treatment and put it onto Star Wars. And it just works. I don't know if it's that, you know, the samurai type. You get the Eastern influence there, and then the comedy. So there's that balance. The same thing you see in the whole series.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to it. Now you're gonna again check me on the name because I'm not gonna try the Russian.
It's Genndy Tartakovsky.
That's right, Tartakovsky. You'd think he'd be making some kind of ballet. No, he's animator. It's a different guy.
I'm probably butchering that pronunciation as well. But yeah, no, he was very formative for me with Dexter's Lab. So when he was the one, and his name was really billed with this. It's like, hey, this is like Tartakovsky's Star Wars and his art style and his very kinetic level of storytelling, because like something similar between Samurai Jack, Dexter's Lab, and this Clone Wars is that kind of level of movement that the characters have and that kind of exaggerated style, but still very approachable. So it just really works for the Star Wars universe.
He really grounds in that legend aspect, right? Because it feels like the stories they're telling is legendary, which is appropriate now that it's a Legends material. But also that it is slapsticky and funny, and it has these light moments that counterbalance these like really dark tones you see, especially in the second volume. And then really some body horror nonsense we'll get to. But there's just some silliness on top of all of it. And like I said, it's all peppered through. A note
Yoda
on
riding a horse.
yeah, exactly. It's silly, and I mean, but it all feels earned. It's never
Yes.
like
Feels
ridiculous.
authentic.
Yeah.
And
So the first volume, again, you put it out so well there, is that it is these 3 to 5 minute vignettes that are almost, there's not a lot of script here. There's not a lot of dialogue. If you do, you get very, large kind of grandiose statements from the Jedi, but again, the clones are almost silent. We're talking about the ARC troopers in the very beginning, because this basically opens on a lot of this will be kind of 3 or 4 montage of a battle. Like these are all very much, this is a war and these are battles. This is we're not playing around with a. It's not as, it almost doesn't feel like a space, or I'm trying to say, like the space opera. It's not that. It's not. I mean, there is elements of that, and they do play into the more of those elements later on. But this is a war story. These are battles. People are, it's tactical. There are things happening here. The same thing happens in the Clone Wars, but I think it makes it so much more interesting. What was your takeaway from the first few bits there? That first battle, that first montage of battle.
A really strong start, honestly. To kind of just lean right heavy into the troopers, and the troopers running a siege on a planet. You have Yoda, you have Obi-Wan in the first couple of episodes. You also get introduced to this villain that will serve as Obi-Wan's main task in the first volume, Dirge, who is a very interestingly designed character towards the end, but he's got like his crew of speeder bike droids, and so a really strong start, really pumping the action in. Exactly like you said, not a ton of dialogue. They're really just like, hey, these are war stories. Here's the war that's going on. There is a lot of battle. It's not these. There's not a lot of shadow warfare going on in terms of what's presented at face value. Aside from what we know of Palpatine pulling the strings later, but in this, it's presented very like, hey, these are the battles that occurred, and here are the players in them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's definitely, I mean, this is definitely Lucas at his special edition peak, because my God, if there aren't so many ships pumped into so many ships, it's ridiculous. But it doesn't feel, the art style actually plays into that. I think Tartakovsky made it work. He made it visually interesting. That you were engrossed in it, not like this is nonsense. It's like the cut, the special effect animated of what Lucas would have done with the trailer for episode 7, right? Where you've got Millennium Falcon coming in, and there's like 8. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like a bat swarm of Falcon or the TIE fighters behind him. And it's it's still fun though, and I think Lucas wanted that space to tell that kind of epic war story. I mean, it's literally the title, and he wants to. I mean, Wars is literally in the title twice. It's right. Star Wars, the Clone Wars. Right. So we're gonna do some wars. We're gonna have some shooty time. And a thing I want to bring up with the first volume, and we can talk about this some more, is how powerful they had the Jedi Masters at full force. And I think that's kind of after we see the battle, we move into kind of each Jedi Master having their own little like, I'm awesome. Here's
chapter 5 is the standout underwater episode with Kit Fisto.
Yes.
Which is the first time I've ever seen a lightsaber work underwater, and Kit Fisto, I believe, shirtless, just absolutely
we're going
wrecking fools. So just going all in. And it's really awesome to see. You get to see the Mon Calamari, you get to see the Quarren, so things that we're familiar with, but presented again in a new light. And it's awesome because aside from Anakin and Obi-Wan, the prequels don't show a ton of Jedi. So again, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Mace, and Yoda. The rest of the Jedi are kind of just be very little screen time is what I'm trying to say. So this really gives them a chance to shine.
Short shrifted for sure. I mean, and that that plays out. I mean, that one of the reasons too it gets its criticism is like you just see 30, no, maybe like 150, 200 lightsabers ignite at once. You're like, whoa, and then you're like, they're all gonna die.
A bunch of them die.
Yeah, a bunch of them just they're not okay. They just have the lightsaber. It's no different if you or I picked one up. We're like masters and
handle their own.
Right, and it's not and what they did for Samuel L. and Mace Windu and that character, it's the biggest, the saddest part that didn't get trans over for me is that episode of just Mace Windu basically bare knuckling a whole battalion of battle droids by himself.
No, completely owning them.
Just force throwing. Like I'm surprised. Like he was, it was just, he just does what you expect Mace Windu to do in that situation. And I'm surprised they didn't just have him like leaning on his, lightsaber, just walking out, just like, nah, it was nothing. Like, I'm fine. But going through that story, and now we, from that perspective, so we've got the story of the soldiers, and again, it's not as intimate as what we see in the 3D. It's just kind of setting the stage where we want to tell the story of the soldiers from the clones' point of view. They are people, and what does that mean? That conflict, which I thought was cool, but again, way played down compared to the 3D. We have the legendary Jedi Masters, and we get to see them kind of hulk out and just go nuts, Force unleashed, if you will. And then this through line now of Anakin and Obi-Wan, kind of stuck in between the two, and Obi-Wan definitely admiring and working towards being a good general and a good master. But Anakin really kind of being camaraderie and a skilled pilot. We don't see it as much as we do in the 3D, but what we do see is a development arc for Anakin that spans both volumes. That is something that is so much more. They took the idea of turning and what happens to a Jedi that's rushed through, basically, and really showing the detriment of that. And I think it really starts with moving it through volume 1. They then sort of show up the master pupil relationship on Ilum, with the Force crystals. And what's really nice about that relationship that we see is not only does it play into the idea of, again, we're looking at legends, we're looking at this from a, George is like, okay, I get it. Like, I need to show them what that looks like. I need to show them what the Force looks like, what the more intricacies of, I'll do the intricacies of politics all day to start off episode 1, but I'm not going to go into the mysticism of the Force, which is what people are interested in. And then we get it. We get their sacred temple, where you see the building of a lightsaber. I think Lucas wanted more like, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say that's where you see the gathering.
Right.
And Ilum will become a key point of Star Wars canon from here on out, because it will reappear in the 3D show in the Gathering arc,
right,
where the Padawans find their crystals, or better yet, the crystals find them.
Right. And
Ilum will also be referenced in the recent game Jedi Fallen Order.
Right.
It's a playable level where you can take Cal to get your crystal, and depending on whether or not you believe the visual dictionary, Starkiller Base is actually cut into Ilum. So, and where it draws some of the power aside from the sun. So Ilum is definitely a through line, and it's cool that we get to see. There's a lot of firsts in this Clone Wars. In these 25 episodes, we see a lot of firsts. Ilum, getting to see that for the first time was really cool. We'll obviously get into some of the other ones like Asajj, but
right. We're trotting through a little bit more, and I think that's good. I think because it deserves it. It deserves a little dig up, because it really is, from my perspective, it's a couple things. It's Lucas trying to pitch the larger series, but in a way, it's also Lucas pointing to, because Ilum, I'm pretty sure the Gathering and things come from the extended universe. I mean, I don't think that was. I think Lucas wanted the lightsaber building to be that one shot he made of Luke. A little Tinker toy, just like, oh, look at this. I'm just gonna put this little, and then just take my screwdriver, my Allen wrench.
By one screwdriver.
That's right.
Compiling this right before I head over to Jabba's house.
Yeah, I gotta show up with something fun here. And it's
just gonna blow their mind.
It's exactly.
I mean, just a side note, I love the story that Lucas made the lightsaber green so that it would show up against the blue.
Oh,
the
really?
Blue skies of Tatooine. There was really no other story reason for it. It was just like, it's going to look weird when Luke is, murdering people on Jabba's sail barge against the bright blue sky. So better make it green.
Could you imagine if he'd pick purple at that point? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like. And so what's just one other thing. I think that's that one, or it's Vader's Anakin's lightsaber. It's a Kodak flash remote. So Rochester, New York, we could go raid that factory real quick and grab us some lightsabers.
And actually see the Rochester, New York printed on it in Empire Strikes Back when Luke reaches out for it. So
this is why I get you on, because this is fantastic. We were made, every child in Rochester, across the world, but Rochester specifically, made to love Star Wars, because call out to the hometown. So yeah, we see them. We see a lot of tie-ins to obviously the prequels. It's pumping up the prequels for the end here, but to the extended universe and beyond. We move into, okay, we've trod new ground. We've trod some old ground. We're pulling the prequels references, but now they want to start building in their own characters. So Dirge felt like, a softball attempt at Grievous. Like, it just was like, okay, here's what's Grievous. Here's one design of Grievous that we're like, he's a squid monster on the inside. Sure,
exactly.
Sure.
Proto Grievous.
Yeah, Proto Grievous. Dooku's like, I need a tall looking that one. We'll try that. We'll try Squidman first, and if not, we'll get the old abandoned warrior. That's mostly machine now.
Together from spare part.
That's right. But they do take one more swing again. I think this was a second attempt at a character they probably had originally designed for 2 or even Phantom Menace with Asajj Ventress, and she's a fantastic villain. The devotee, I think she sits the ground actually, honestly, for what we see in the Inquisitors later. But I think you have some great thoughts on Asajj.
Yeah, so Asajj is arguably the biggest thing to come out of this 25 episodes, because it is folded directly into the 3D Clone Wars. And what's interesting is that current Disney Star Wars canon has continued to fold more Asajj's stories. So in chapters 6 and 7 of Volume 1, Dooku finds her on Ratatak in the arena, just kind of completely just being an absolute badass in the arena and consistently winning fights, and that's when he decides to recruit her to become a Sith apprentice. So in the new canon audiobook by Disney, Dooku Jedi Lost by Kevin Scott, they roll that right in. So that is where Dooku finds her. He finds her in Ratatak, he finds her in the arena, and that's how he gets her to join him and become his apprentice. So really cool. This is Asajj's first appearance, and it's really cool that element of her backstory has now been recanonized, and that she is a continuing part of the canon, because her character, it's just, credit to Dave Filoni fleshing that story out, and the struggles she had dealing with Dooku, dealing with the dark side, and finding her place in the world, because the 3D show will take her on quite the ride, and novels and comics do as well. But it's nice to have her even in this. Like, she has that interesting design that I think you're right is probably a discarded Darth Maul design. It definitely looks like a version of Darth Maul that they came up with for episode 1.
She looks like a Night Sister, right?
She has that voice, and it's just all very immediately recognizable. One of the things that Kathleen Kennedy talks about in terms of how know what's a Star Wars character is that they have a silhouette that you can recognize. So whether it's Darth Vader, Yoda, or stormtroopers. Like these silhouettes, you see them and you know exactly what they are. And Asajj is one of those characters. You see a silhouette of Asajj Ventress with her curved double blade or double red lightsabers, and you know that's who it is. So just comes right out of the gate, is immediately a character that fans gravitate towards, and leaves a huge impression.
Yeah, it's that and the malevolence in Dooku you see brought. I think she is a good foil for a couple characters too. I think obviously Dooku, you see that master, but like the manipulative master, the kind of conniving. Again, it's all from Sidious, but you can definitely tell he's got his own little kind of swagger about everything he does too. And the double bladed saber that the double saber that he gives her. He's got his like signature curved hilt. I think that's kind of a Dooku, like I'm rich and I like my hilt's curved. I don't know what that's exactly. Yeah, it's fancy. It's a fancy lightsaber as opposed to what she was carrying on before. But I think where this really comes into play is when you see her pitting off against Anakin, and Anakin is the Padawan, Padawan light versus Padawan dark. And that play off of each other, they are basically equally powerful, I'd say. And this is where Anakin has to step up and get beyond her. And even flight and being pilots, like they were pretty well matched. And it kind of sets a pace for Anakin. Again, not seen in the 3D. In the retail they had, the amount of space that they had to tell the story, they get a lot more Anakin than I think even the 3D does, especially this transition point where he goes from Padawan to Knight, which we'll see another, a little bit later on, we will see that transition, which is something we don't normally see.
Yeah, that fight is incredible for a number of reasons. Number one, the setting, the fact that it takes place on top of the Massassi Temple on Yavin 4,
right?
Which is just another fun thing for fans. But in terms of the fight itself, you're right. It's the two Padawans fighting off against each other, and it really pushes Anakin to the brink, and it sheds in that a dark side mentality because he really gives into his rage in order to defeat her, and he totally lets loose on her, and obviously paralleling how Luke will let loose on Vader at the end, just slashing away wildly over and over again until he gets to the point where Luke stops himself, after he cuts off Vader's hand, but Anakin slashes so hard that he crushes part of the temple and essentially sends Asajj to her death. So it really is that moment of, and we also get something that will be redone again. Ooh. And again, where Anakin here sees the faces of Qui-Gon, sees of Yoda.
Right. Yeah, it is fascinating to really get into that struggle. I just don't think, again, they really play up the benevolence in the 3D one, but you don't get that you get the dark push towards the end where we expect it, but we just don't. It's not as clear of an arc. That's what I think that these two volumes, what they're really trying to do is push that arc, and a lot of credit is where credit's due to the voice actors for both of these. Now, for both Obi-Wan, who remains the unmoving, pious, light side user, period. In many ways, just stays right there, so we can watch Anakin transfer over that. And that's you have to give me the name again for Obi-Wan, but he'll be for both. He'll be for 2D and 3D.
It's James Arnold Taylor,
right?
Is Obi-Wan,
right? And then our Anakin does not transfer over, but he is the video game Anakin, which I think was really cool.
Yeah, so Anakin is played here by Matt Lucas, and he will later transition to be played by Matt Lanter, who will also become a huge fan favorite and have recently appeared in live action in an episode of Mandalorian, Prison Break episode.
That's right. That's right. The Bill Burr episode is I like to think about.
Yes, the Bill Burr episode, which is still wild that
I love it.
is in Star Wars, but here we are. It's
it
a
warms,
wild time for
warms
us,
my heart.
for fans.
So yeah, I think that I think that we are in a really cool place with Star Wars, with looking at it from this vantage point. Do you know what I mean? Like getting into the whole Clone Wars, now the animated world that LucasArts is in, and you know, LucasArts via Disney, comes from this. I think this is the seed that actually brought all of this comes from this attempt, this blending of the canonized trilogy, the story beats from you know, more the mainline TV shows, mainline movies, to blending in the EU stuff and just trying new ideas in short storytelling and not trying to be these epic stories. Although, you know, they fall into those 3 or 4 story arcs, which, you know, that kind of transfers over. So,
and just before we go on, I do just want to say about Matt Lucas, building off what you're saying with the voice actors, I think he really takes an interesting approach. So Lancer will do an Anakin that is, they do a lot of work, both story-wise and in the voice acting, to make Anakin super likable in the 3D show. This Anakin here, done by Matt Lucas, is really tapping into that episode 2 Anakin, but in a way I think that totally works. So he's arrogant, a little sarcastic, a little curt, a little dismissive, but he's still having fun. Because Anakin is arrogant because he knows, like, he has that chosen one vibe to him. Like, he knows there's a prophecy about him. He knows he is destined for greatness, or at least something. So I think that the performance here totally works in his dealings with Obi-Wan, and then when he is dealing with Padme as well, where he has that multi-layered approach where he is sweet to her. But, you know, when fighting Asajj and the rage comes out, you really get that. It's a really, I think, great performance, nuanced performance where he can touch all those things and paint Anakin with a broad brush, whereas some people will say in Christensen in the movies is pretty one note. So it's nice to, again, fill in those gaps, see Anakin's frame of mind, and get a more of a fleshed out personality to him in these.
It's almost like they took Anakin, this rage, and really like playing up not the rage that we get from Hayden at 3, which is very different. That's peak, right? So that's the highest point. But the rage that's building through all of this and through the Clone Wars is where I think we get Kylo Ren from. Is we get that he's kind of unfiltered that, and I think, you know, they were the story group, Pablo Hidalgo and the like, are looking at that when they're looking at, you know, how do we incorporate a character that is just rage and just, you know, it's not that he hates sand, just hates everything.
Yeah. And, you know, again, interesting why I think this battle is so important, because all 3 villains in the prequel movies are shades of Anakin's personality and where he'll become. So Darth Maul is the rage monster that will get attributed to Vader, the rage and the wrath of Vader. And then in 2, you have the fallen Jedi with Count Dooku.
Right.
And then in 3, you have the half man, half machine in Grievous. So all 3 aspects of Anakin's personality. But continue that line with this to introduce Asajj as the Padawan. Again, really smart move by the storytellers to be like, hey, we see what George is doing with these villains. We see where this is all going to. It's like poetry of rhymes, to quote George himself.
Yeah.
But to have that, just yet another foil for Anakin to come across, and to come across her on the top of the temple that will launch the attack, that will reunite him with his son. It's very poetic. It's very well constructed. So
yeah, and I think that a lot of those foreshadow, right? Those villains all foreshadow where he's going. Asajj gets him where he is right now on the opposite side, which I think is really cool, right? And that's what another great part of this whole story arc for him is you get to see him where he is. It's not that we are, how is he going to get to Vader? How is he going to get to Vader? It's there, but it's really more focused on that character degradation down to to Vader, or really the loss of Anakin. I mean, the you see some white knighting, but then you really see the shades change. It's a little more step by step. It's definitely, you see it more over time. So the end of Volume 1, again,
the introduction of a fan favorite character.
Sure, yes, and we're not talking about General Grievous, folks. We are talking about Shaggy, SAG-GI, and this is, I mean, this talks to Tartakovsky's like love and respect for classic Cartoon Network Hanna-Barbera. I mean, this is so this is a Jedi Padawan under Ki-Adi-Mundi. I think he was I think it might have been his Padawan. I don't know. He was in the mix with a bunch of other masters who are pinned down by the droids and a new droid general. And he's the nervous, impulsive, and not stoned enough, honestly. I wish he was more stoned. But Padawan, and this is the introduction of Grievous. And Grievous, so they're like, who is this guy? We're getting overwhelmed. They're calling out for help. And Shaggy, this is a tense moment. They did also a really good job. I'll say here, this is like something out of a horror film or an action horror film.
And they really take it almost directly from Aliens.
Yes,
Like he's above them, they can't find him, they don't know where he is, or Predator, and it's just like he's on the ceiling, then he's dropping down, and he's pulling people into the darkness. Like it really is for 5-minute cartoon clip. Like it's fantastic. It really does set the stage, and you see him grab lightsabers, you see him use lightsabers, and you get that, he's collecting them, they're trophies. And again, this is a year before Revenge of the Sith even comes out.
Right.
So this is,
this is Boba Fett in the Christmas, the holiday special.
Yeah, exactly.
Done correctly. So our poor young Shaggy runs out to, I guess, confront Grievous, just so overwhelmed that he doesn't know what, so he runs out. And the dude gets a death that is not fair. I mean, he gets just stomped by Grievous. He doesn't get sliced. There's no lightsaber involved. He just jumps on him. And the Buzz Lightyear slow pan up of Grievous's whole body as he's elongating himself, which he does in the movies too, obviously, but this is just much more, and that like ghost specter like face, which is, it gets adapted quite a bit for the movie. Even the 3D animated does not have this, like, he looks like a ghost and like death, but like a pale ghost death, like he's very intimidating. I think this design is far more sinister than what we see later on, and where there was humor kind of tied throughout this, Grievous is humorless. He is death incarnate. He's a very intimidating, scary person, where it's not the case. And you I think they had to, because I'm sure they were writing this alongside of 3 in the game. Like they had to play, because the game for 3 came out before the movie did. So they had to play it down to where we eventually get Grievous. But right now, this is a super soldier. This guy is a murder machine. I think at this point he's probably all droid. I don't think that they even play that he's a person. I think he's just supposed to be a murder machine. But a powerful introduction. He puts the master. So they do such a great job, right? They do in the beginning. They show these masters. Not so much Ki-Adi-Mundi. I think he's in a space battle or two, if I remember. Or no, maybe Plo Koon. But Ki-Adi-Mundi and what else is the Shakti, who dies all the time apparently. But they're in this battle, and Grievous is putting them through their paces. Yes. And so they're showing, they really play up Grievous in this way. They're like, okay, these are Jedi Masters on the council, and they're getting their butts handed to them by this super soldier. And I mean that is and then they leave it there, right? That's the cliffhanger they leave it on, basically. For Volume 1. Now as we transition to Volume 2, did Volume 1 they also do the knighting ceremony?
I believe it was the end of Volume 1.
Volume,
the
okay.
knighting ceremony of
Right.
Anakin Skywalker, which is
Yeah, you want to talk about
one of my favorite pieces of canon, it has been recanon slightly.
Yeah.
So essentially, what happens is Obi-Wan is walking Anakin to the council, and Anakin's like, "What about why am I getting called to the?" Anakin's like being
what
all
a council.
annoying about it, and Obi-Wan's like, "Just relax," and he's almost like treating it like, "Hey, it's like as someone would take someone to their own surprise party."
Yeah, it's the world's worst surprise party. It's like your stepdad is having a bunch of his guy friends over, and you're like, ugh, I don't want to go with you to this.
I don't think so. But yeah, he enters the dark council chamber,
Right.
and he kind of knows immediately from there. And then all of the lightsabers of the Jedi Council ignite, which in this awesome moment, and everyone has their hoods on, their cloaks on, and they say Yoda gives the ceremony, and and Anakin kneels, and they do the knighting, and he says, "By the right of the council, by the will of the Force, you may rise. You're now, Jedi Knight, or a Knight of the Jedi Order." And it's always stuck with me as an awesome moment because we've never seen it before. We've heard Obi-Wan mention the trials, but we never see him take it. We never see his Padawan braid get cut. But here, after Yoda gives that line, he then cuts Anakin's Padawan braid, and it's delivered to Padme, and she smiles lovingly.
Right. The last haircut you'll ever get.
But nice. Here's this clump of hair for your secret boyfriend. I'm like, who even brought that?
You'll put it in that same little lockbox the 9-year-old version of him gave you.
3PO brings it to her, honestly, and it's like, where did he go? Like, was he hanging out in the Jedi Council? But anyways, we canonize in the sense that this also comes into Fallen Order,
right.
When Shri knights Cal in that game, and she gives the same oath, and he kneels, and she does the actual knighting with the lightsaber, which is a really cool thing. Again, just something this series was exactly like you said, trying to tread new ground, kind of foreshadow where things were going, but also really do new things and introduce them. So I really loved that moment.
And it's that look into the mysticism, which again, I think, as much as Lucas did a great job, and I mean, really more Lawrence Kasdan did a great job of getting that from Yoda, he definitely stripped all that out, and just the prequels was like, nope, none of this. We're doing trade negotiations, and it's going to be an infectious disease that gives you the Force sensitivity. I'm like, that's not that's not what you originally intended.
As a Phantom Menace defender, I'll let it go for now, but that's for another podcast.
No, I understand, and there's nothing wrong. There's nothing. The Phantom Menace is a great reason to watch pod racing. I think
wonderful kids movie.
It is a wonderful kids movie, and it's a that we were those kids for that movie. Like that was literally for us. And Jar Jar was funny, and but the one lollipop where they made you suck on his tongue, it just the marketing went too far. No, I think that it's not a knock against the prequels. I think this is the redemptive arc of the prequels. It starts here. It really does, and I don't hate the prequels. That's not. I think. Really, it's so telling that you take Empire and work outward, and the quality of the films kind of follow that path to some extent. The heart that when you get away from that, when you get away from the, when you look at the Jedi without that mysticism, and you take that away, in the cold light of day, that's what Luke sees, right? Their arrogance is what let Sidious happen, and then you look at the other way, and you're like, oh yeah. I mean, it's happening right around them, and they are kind of engulfed, but they're engulfed in this mysticism that is so cool. And I think it's a heart to Star Wars is to kind of get entangled in that. So
pair that with Ilum, right. Just kind of adding to the lore of the Jedi, right. Seeing them not only in action, seeing more of them, seeing them do their knighting ceremony, seeing their where they get the lightsabers and all of that. It's really adding to that lore.
Right. And this is from someone, I mean, my favorite part of Star Wars is taking an X-Wing and taking a TIE fighter and doing this.
Of course.
It's my favorite part of Star Wars. So
I think it's everyone's favorite part of Star Wars, honestly.
The whole thing. But yeah, I was Rogue Squadron's my whole storyline. I was robbed in Rogue One. I'm still hurt because it's not what it could have been. So
small correction: the knighting ceremony is the first episode of Volume 3. So we get into more Volume 3. But is there anything else you wanted to clean up from?
No, I think it was a beautiful transition that we did on accident, actually, and I think we should just ride that through. I think Volume 1 and 2 again. We start with those ADD adult, which perfect for my 10-year-old self. 11-year-old self. Perfect. Like, I love that, and I think we get now into something we talked about pre-show was just like they basically took the shot from 2 where you see the clone army, and they say, let's just see that now. Let's see that now with the energy of Yavin 4. Let's see that now with the energy of let's scatter them now and see what that looks like. And that's what they did. And they had Obi-Wan standing there looking over going to arms of the clones and just being like, oh, Qui-Gon could not prepare anyone. I don't think Qui-Gon could have prepared us for this. And then they just go out from there. Okay, let's just kind of play with that for a whole series. And that's really what this was, is a series. And then they get to Volume 2 and they say, okay, we've had fun. We've extrapolated as far as we can with that. Let's bring it back in now because we have a very specific place we need to get to. And I think you've had some really good takes on Volume 2. So I'll let you kind of lead us through this, and I'll provide color this time.
So Volume 2 is only 5 episodes, but they are longer. So they're about 10 to 12 minutes episodes, and again, coming out in March, right before a couple months before episode 3 comes out. So like you said, we ended Volume 1 on a cliffhanger. So Volume 2 kicks off right as the ARC troopers are rescuing Ki-Adi-Mundi, Aayla Secura, and Shaak Ti from the Grievous attack, but Grievous escapes. And then you also get the knighting ceremony, and like we talked about, C-3PO delivering Anakin's braid to Padme. And then that leads into the next episode, which we're not going to really touch on much, but it is an episode where Anakin and Padme spend a night together on Naboo, and you draw your own conclusions on that. The fandom certainly has, but can skip right over that and go to the last.
In the Jungle should have been the name of that episode.
Which are the Siege of Coruscant by the Separatists. So this is where we're really ramping up to the beginning of episode 3. So it's Palpatine getting pulled by Grievous as Coruscant is under attack. And while that's happening, we also have Anakin doing the Trial of Fire. So this is the body horror that you were talking about, the slug
the body horror
drip that he goes into a cave, and essentially like a leech starts drawing all these, it's almost like a war paint on Anakin's body. As he shriveled in the cave, and as it draws it all over his body and his face, it also starts drawing on the wall, and the wall turns into a cave painting in which we see a wolf lose its arm, and then darkness pour out, and then the darkness matches the markings on Anakin, and then the markings become the face of Vader in the cave, and that's.
That was a good summary. No, it was fine. It was a good quick summary, but I think you were going to talk a little bit more about. Tell us a little bit more about how this kind of parallels with what we've seen before in continuing with Anakin.
Yeah, just wrapping up there. The cave drawing forms the shape of Vader.
Right.
So again, just signaling where this is all going to go. And also, we'll see a similar version of this in the Mortis arc of the 3D animated Clone Wars, when on Mortis, Anakin sees his future, where it's going to or a vision of it, and he sees the Vader mask in flames. So again, just paralleling, the pigment, melted, burned shape of Skull, the death that will follow Anakin and becoming.
Yeah, and you just see so much more Anakin. You just see so much more of that descent. And it's nothing against the 3D ones. I think they, it's all story. It's important. We see a lot more of the mysticism. I think Filoni does a really good job of opening that up a lot more and looking at is it the Eternals? What are the ones? I'm sorry, I'm not remembering. With the father, the daughter, and the son, right? The triad that lives on the forest shard. There's just that's a whole. We're gonna get there. We gotta get there. You gotta earn that that level of mysticism and craziness. That, again, they kind of they're breaking apart the Force in ways that are interesting. But I think what I like again about this second half of Volume 2, my perspective on it at least is what happens on Coruscant and that the raid of Coruscant. So obviously Episode 3, we see the raid of the Jedi Temple. Like, oh, that's it's cool. It's visceral. You see Anakin going full dark. You see him really turning into Vader. I mean, you can't irredeemable things he does there. But what we don't see is the cityscape being attacked. A lot of my favorite Star Wars canon stuff, or sorry, extended universe stuff outside of canon is Rogue Squadron, but a lot of the city raids, right? So, and you see this throughout the story, but this is the big city raid. This is the heart of the, even when we watch the Empire fall in the original trilogy, we don't see them falling in Coruscant. We see them falling in their battle stations, in their prized possessions. So to see this, it almost, even though we know it's orchestrated, it still is just that conflict in the city. It's almost like Theed. It's almost a little bit like the Episode 1 battle in Naboo, but it's not, because Naboo is still so sylvan, and it's a like a pretty landscape. It's not the big city that we talk about in Episode 2 and beyond. The Inner Rim and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's really awesome because essentially, so in terms of the Separatists or the CIS, Dooku is the political face, the political leader.
Right.
And then Grievous is the military commander. So essentially what we have here is the military commander raiding the Republic's home world and essentially stealing the president of the United States, like right out from under the Secret Service.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
It's a really awesome moment. It sets up again, how much Palpatine is pulling strings, but also how vulnerable the Jedi truly are at this moment. That this is allowed to happen. How stretched thin they are, and it's just a really great scene. And we also get to see one of my favorite parts. We see Mace Windu reaching out with a Force to try to pull Grievous and crushing his rib cage, creating the cough. Which again, when I was a kid. Or younger and watched this, I was like, oh man, that cough's going to come into play. I just know it. Episode 3, and like Episode 3, he coughs like twice. I'm like, why? Okay.
Hey, but he does get shot in the chest and die. So I mean, Windu made Obi-Wan look like a badass.
Yeah, gave him the opening.
That's right. No, I think that that also plays into the idea that obviously they had to get Grievous to where he was going to be. He can't be this specter of death, destruction machine.
I think that's right.
So that's definitely part of that. I don't want to say retconning, but they definitely had to pull him down from this, like, just horribly, like, I mean, even in the 3D anime, they don't go all the way there with it. He kills a bunch of people. He kills that poor little Mon Calamari Padawan in his temple, or his his dungeon, basically. But he doesn't have that same. He doesn't stomp on a person and kill them.
And the design, I remember they released an action figure of Grievous from this Clone Wars again before Revenge of the Sith, and he kind of looks like almost like a serpent. Like his body just kind of like contorts and conforms into this weird shape. That again, going back to Tartakovsky's kinetic art style, the movement is very key. So I think you're right in that, Mace crushing him a little bit so that he hunches, that he coughs, is like, hey, all right, well, he's not completely unbeatable now.
Yeah, there's a weakness there. And that plays into Vader's weakness. I mean, obviously these were all planned, and it's cool.
The cough and the breathing.
Right. It's kind of all pulling at it, but it is fun to see what they wanted to do, right? And what a failed concept of that was from season 1. Squid Man or the tentacle thing.
Dirge.
Thanks. Yeah, that one. So yeah, I think kind of a wrap up here. Because we're getting close to time, and I know we lost people's attention way before. Oh, you know what though? I have to say it. The striptease with C-3PO getting his gold plating.
We almost made it through an entire recording without mentioning.
Can't miss it. I mean, this is what it is. There's things I missed, and that's one of them. It's horrifying.
First appearance of the gold plating.
Again, if you got here and you're interested in watching this, that it is all on YouTube, except that episode. I went to go back and not the link you sent me. They all collected them. You can watch them all the way through. It's 2 hours. It's really worth your time. It's a 2 hours well spent. But there is some where they do individual episodes. I think it's chapter 23 or 24, not available in this country, and it's because it's too hot for YouTube. The problem with that one.
They are also collected on 2 volumes of DVDs, which I do own.
That's
I'm
right.
very proud to own those. But you can also grab them there. I'm sure they're on eBay or some form of Amazon. Will it ever make it to Disney Plus? I can only hope.
I wonder what ownership that falls under, and I wonder where Cartoon Network falls in the Disney Fox pantheon. I actually don't think it's either of them when I think about it. Anyway, I think this is a great talk. Thank you so much for doing this. It's always fun to nerd out and just kind of go deep in kind of obscure Star Wars. But it's the beginning. It's Star Wars animated episode 0. So I think it really pairs us. I'm glad we started with this. For those listening again, thank you for getting all the way to the end here. And our plan going forward is we're going to, if you're listening to this, it shouldn't be too much longer. We're going to have Josiah Leroy, the famous, the infamous, the dad of dadcasts. I don't know what his title is. Grand Poobah, I think, is a perfect one for him. Of the Geekiverse is going to come and grace us and watch the movie. So this bought Lucas the movie. The movie buys the series. And this is correct me here, Brian. Filoni is in the movie. This is Filoni's movie too, or is Filoni just in the series?
That's a good question. I believe Filoni is the movie because Ahsoka.
Ahsoka, right? Yeah.
But I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe that he is involved because Lucas positioned him away from working on Avatar: The Last Airbender, and to work on Clone Wars. So I believe Ahsoka is his creation. I
can't believe that he did Avatar, and another show that we need to go through a couple episodes at a time is the Clone. That just dropped on Netflix. So, we are recording this in the heart of the quarantine. So, got nothing better to do at some point. You gotta stop going on Zoom calls and meetings and watch some great TV. So yeah, we're gonna do that with Josiah, and by we I mean I absolutely, Brian, if you want to come back, would love to. Let's do this again. We should try to get through all of it together. I think we should get a third chair in, like I said, Josiah. I've got some people. I think you've got some friends that'd love to sit in and watch a couple episodes with us and do that. Because I can't do. It would be very silly, and we may have tried it already, where I try to do this by myself. And
it's dangerous to go alone.
It's very dangerous to go alone. Super story bros shouldn't be bro. It should not be singular. It should be, and bros being the male and feminine. We're doing both. So everyone's a bro. This is. We want anyone we can get on here and talk to us and with us about all this fun stuff. I know this series. If we go through all of Clone Wars, probably get through. I'd love to do Rebels. And whatever comes after, because I'm sure we'll be there by that point. But there's a lot we could go into in between. Avatar, we're talking maybe going through some really good, some old video games, and talking through some stories there. I think we made some great stories, references already to Jedi Fallen Order. I think that would be fun to do as well. But sky's the limit. We're just here to talk good stories. So thank you, Brian, so much again. Thank you guys for listening. And till next time, see you later. and stop recording.